What's up guys, it's Jess. Today I'm going to be painting my first skateboard deck ever, and I'm going to be walking you guys through my whole process on it. If you haven't already done so, click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and follow me on social media. Alright, so first things first, I'm sanding off my surface to make sure it's nice and smooth. Then I'm just grabbing some blue tape to make sure that I protect the other side while I'm painting. And I'm just going around the edges to make sure I have a nice crisp line when I take off the tape. And this will also ensure that I get nothing on it while I'm painting. And just like any surface that you paint on, you want to make sure that you prime it. So I'm taking some gesso and a little bit of water. I'm also taking a flat, large brush and I'm applying the gesso thinly across the whole board. I'm just using side-to-side motions to make sure that I have a nice even coat. Then I'm gonna let it dry and I'm gonna apply a second one. Alright, so once I have the second coat on there, I'm going to let it dry, and while it's drying, I'm gonna open up my sketchbook and begin planning what I'm gonna put on this board. I always start with a little thumbnail sketch, which is what I'm doing here, and then I move my sketch over next to it to enlarge it a bit to get a little more details in. I really wanted to make this an epic skateboard deck, so I was thinking of painting a Buddha on it because I don't think I've ever seen that anyone do that. So I was thinking to have a Buddha with some waves and mountains behind with a nice sunset as well in the background. Once I finished my drawings on my paper, I'm bringing them into my handy dandy iPad Pro, and I love drawing my line work on here. I'm taking my app called Procreate, I'm bringing in a photo of the sketch that I position on top of a photo of my skateboard, and I'm beginning to finalize all the line work. I just lower the opacity of the original sketch that I brought into my iPad on a separate layer. Then I take another layer on top of that with a regular inking brush in black, and I outline the whole thing to make sure I have all the details in when I begin to print the image out and put it onto my board. Alright, so once the sketch is done, it's time to print out the sketch the size of our board so we can transfer it onto it. I bring the line drawing into Illustrator, and in the printing option, I select Tile Imageable Areas. And it automatically splits the image into the sections that is going to fit your 8.5 by 11 paper, and when you print it out, you just have to piece it together and then position it onto your surface, whatever it is that you're transferring on. This is a great tip if you guys are doing any bigger pieces and you don't want to actually redraw it and you don't have a projector. I actually find this is more accurate to print it out and then just use transfer paper to transfer on the surface. I have now pieced my puzzle together. I used some Scotch tape, quickly had that going. It printed 2 different colors because I ran out of ink, but it's okay as long as you can see the line work, it'll do. I wait for my board to completely dry, and once that's done, I take my carbon black transfer paper, I position it on top of my board, I tape it up, and I also position my sketch on top of the board because now it's time to transfer. Once you put the transfer paper facing down and you place your sketch on top, when you outline it, it's actually going to appear onto your board, so you're basically making a little imprint onto your surface. All right, guys, I hope you liked my studio assistant. She's always with me. But now it's time to begin painting. I'm just laying out my paint onto my homemade Stay Wet palette. If you guys want to see a video on that, I'll be sure to do some instructions on how you can do it yourself. They do sell their own, but I try to be as innovative as possible. It's actually my first time using the golden fluid acrylics. I do use their regular tubes of paint and I love their quality, but I decided to try and see how the fluids were working, and I loved these paints. So with acrylic, as usual, you have to do lots of layers and layers and layers of paint. So I'm actually using a technique of glazing as well as just applying the paint with a little bit of water and matte medium. Since I did that gradient background, it really helped me get a layer of paint under the actual details that I was doing, so it helps when you're actually painting on top. And acrylic dries so you can layer on top whenever you want. And for this specific painting, I really wanted a very strong, beautiful energy around him. Since he does have his eyes closed, he's meditating. So I wanted to have a beautiful sunset behind and incorporate the gradient going from the bright reds and yellows into the purples and blues that are gonna happen towards the bottom. And just like during any sunset or sunrise, there are going to be reflected lights. So I decided to incorporate that bright orangish yellow onto the clouds and the mist that is going to connect to the water under him. So just a general method that I use, I'm starting with the midtones and I'm working my way either through the shadows into the highlights. And then once that's dry, I layer on top. And I do use cross hatching and little constant little marks to get and build up the paint. Now I did stylize the waves a bit more and it was so much fun to paint these. So I loved doing these waves. I'm gonna have to do another piece with them. They're so fun to paint. And I think they were coming out looking pretty cool. So there's tons and tons of back and forth, hours of painting, going back in and doing details and adding colors on top of colors. So I felt that once I was doing lots of glazing, the piece really started to come to life. And after I reached a point where I felt like I was done, I quickly got my signature on there. And now it's time to let it dry completely and take off the tape. Okay guys, so one last step before I show you guys the final reveal. We must seal our painting on the board so that any UV light will not fade the image away over time. Let me tell you guys, this was my first time varnishing and I was so nervous, but I read all the instructions and I was very careful and I made sure that it was completely dry before I began. I am using the golden polymer satin varnish and I made sure to do a 4:1 ratio just like they said on the box. And then I crossed my fingers and prayed that nothing is gonna go wrong. I made sure to use a brand new brush and just apply a very thin layer side to side to make sure I cover the whole thing evenly. And I ended up falling in love with the process, and it wasn't scary at all. Alright guys, so before I show you the epic reveal, I want to talk to you about a huge update I have on my website. You type in jessicakarpushin.com, it'll take you to my homepage and you can scroll through my paintings, you can find my store, you can also see my sketchbook work, and you can also find the new movement I started called Bond and Paint. We're doing live online paint parties at the convenience of your home. You can join to see the next event. The one on Mother's Day was such a big hit, and I have all the supplies linked in my website. So you guys can join and it's going to be awesome. Also, I launched my custom commissions where you can fill out a form, and if you scroll down, you guys can read some client feedback. So feel free to contact me with any questions. Without further ado, here's the final painting.